Craig Bellamy was one of English football's most exciting yet polarizing players in the 2000s. He brought a lot of intensity on and off the pitch. While he was brilliant at running defenders down like an apex predator and scoring goals when healthy, Bellamy also got into a lot of trouble. Even the great Sir Bobby Robson once said that Craig Bellamy is the only man who can start an argument with himself. The Welsh footballer started his senior career with First Division side Norwich City in 1997 at the age of 17. Bellamy spent half a decade learning the ropes. Even as a youngster, Bellamy never shied away from voicing his opinion and challenging the status quo in a place. This eventually got him into trouble with one of the more senior members in the squad. English defender Kevin Scott, who was teammates with Bellamy, seemed pissed off by Bellamy's antics during training. As a result, Scott tried to get back at Bellamy by cleaning him out with flying tackles. One training session in particular almost left a young Bellamy in tears after Scott continued to pick on him. Fortunately for Bellamy, some of his teammates stood up for him, but young Bellamy still had to face tougher tests. The 2-2 draw between Wolves and Norwich at the Molineux in December 1998 is often remembered for Bellamy's nasty injury. See, Bellamy was tough for a young lad, but unfortunately Kevin Muscat, a notorious player with 123 yellow cards and 12 red cards in his career, was on the opposite side of the pitch. Many saw Muscat as a lunatic, and some players even decided to pursue legal action against Muscat for the damage he caused on the field. This man ended the careers of footballers with some of the most brutal tackles ever seen.
Very lucky not to get hurt in that exchange. Well, we're not sure if he is not hurt, he's still down.
In a match played at a frenetic pace, Muscat had earlier promised Bellamy that he was going to give it to him. It seemed like an empty threat until Muscat stamped on Bellamy's knee in the 69th minute.
So 2-0 and cruising until this happened. Craig Bellamy caught by a reckless lunge from Kevin Muscat. Bellamy was clearly in trouble. It was enough to bring Bruce Rioch off the bench to make his feelings very clear to the referee.
It was just an unnecessary tackle, and obviously with the area of the injury, we were aware that it was a bad tackle on the day.
And the gash to Bellamy's knee took much longer to heal than first expected. He wasn't to play again until February.
The defender's tackle left Bellamy needing 9 stitches for a nasty gash. Bellamy was out for a couple of months, and he considered legal action. Many fans to this day still believe that Muscat's tackle cost Bellamy the rest of his Norwich career because he was never the same after that. Bellamy continued to experience soreness in his knee, no thanks to one of the dirtiest footballers English football has ever seen. Bellamy joined Premier League side Coventry City for the 2000 and 2001 season before making the switch to Newcastle at the end of the season. Bellamy found a lot of success at Newcastle, but every once in a while, he stirred the pot. In November 2001, the Welsh forward, alongside a couple of other teammates, was sent back home from a club training trip in disgrace, and also fined 2 weeks' wages after missing a club dinner in honor of the former Newcastle chairman, Sir John Hall. Bellamy decided it was better to spend the evening drinking in town instead. He then received a police caution in February 2002. Not to mention that he was also slapped with a £100,000 fine after punching, kicking, and spitting at a 20-year-old female student in the back of a teammate's car. The incident occurred after a visit to a Newcastle nightclub. I should also mention that the Welsh Police and the Football Association of Wales investigated Bellamy for alleged racial and verbal abuse in Cardiff. But stepping back on the pitch, we saw Bellamy get into more trouble. Bellamy was sent off at St James's Park after just 5 minutes for lashing out at Inter defender Marco Materazzi in Newcastle's 4-1 Champions League loss to Inter. Now here's the thing, Materazzi was a very provocative defender who knew how to get under anyone's skin. Think Zidane's headbutt at the 2006 World Cup. Just 5 minutes in, Bellamy recorded the fastest red card in the history of the Champions League for swinging his arm at Materazzi after being punched by him. The Italian was definitely a master of the dark arts, wasn't he? The red card sucked for the Magpies because they were already a goal down, and the last thing they needed was a red card. Bellamy left the pitch in tears. It was his second red card in the Champions League that season, and he got banned for 3 games. and you could understand why his manager was so pissed. Back in September, the cameras caught Bellamy butting Dynamo Kiev defender Tiberiu Guyan at the end of the match in Kiev. Since the referee did not see the incident right away, the decision was rendered based on the video evidence. Let's also throw in the fact that the striker got into more trouble for using abusive words against a linesman. Safe to say, Bellamy was off the rails at Newcastle, and it didn't get any better. Yes, Bellamy once got into a fight with the then assistant manager at Newcastle, John Carver, after a heated argument at Newcastle Airport. The clash occurred in a private departure lounge before the team's flight to a UEFA Cup match against Real Mallorca, and the word on the street was that it involved parking issues. Although the common narrative is that Bellamy threw a chair at the coach, Carver would later clarify that they were just trying to get the chair out of the way. Both men ended up wrestling stupidly on the floor. Unbeknownst to them, Sir Bobby was giving a press conference on the other side of the screens from where they were grappling, and the press noticed that a kerfuffle was going on. Bellamy later admitted to the incident but downplayed it as a brief disagreement. But you know what wasn't a brief disagreement? Colliding with the one and only Graham Souness. The arrival of Patrick Kluivert from Barca brought more competition for Bellamy going into the 2004 and 5 season. After a poor start to the season, Bobby Robson was sacked and replaced by Graham Souness, a manager known for being a disciplinarian. It didn't take long before he clashed with Bellamy. We saw public arguments where Bellamy was pictured swearing at Souness after being substituted during a match, and later on another altercation during training, which the striker didn't want to talk about when asked. The climax came when Bellamy feigned injury to leave training before a match. The manager had had enough. Bellamy was fined 2 weeks' wages with £80,000, and Souness made the call to let the striker go. Here's how Souness narrates the whole incident that played out.
Is it true, Graham, you threw Bellamy out of Newcastle when he didn't do what you wanted him to do? There was probably more to it, but is that the case? Did you kick him out?
He refused to play when he was fit. He was a pain in the ass for most of the time I had him at Newcastle. We have talked subsequently. He realises he was that, and he was a young man who forever talked about going to the next level, always wanted to improve. In that respect, he was a genuine, real deal player. He wanted to improve. He wanted to win things.
Did you kick him out?
I didn't kick him out. I didn't pick him out. He chose not to play one day. I went, took him to the chairman immediately, and I said, "Look, we've got a player who says he's not willing to play and he's fit." And I asked him to repeat that in front of Freddie Shepherd, and he did so. And it was a joint decision from the board and me that he should leave the football club.
Bellamy was subsequently shipped out on loan to Celtic for the remainder of the season before featuring for Blackburn Rovers for another season. Bellamy attracted the attention of Liverpool manager Rafa Benitez. The deal was done in June 2006, but less than a year later, Bellamy had a serious clash with his teammate Jonan Arisa during a Liverpool training camp in Portugal ahead of a Champions League tie with Barcelona. This would mar Bellamy's career forever. Bellamy attacked Arisa with a golf club after Arisa refused to sing. I know, it sounds crazy, right? Apparently there was a sort of tradition among the teammates that involved singing. Bellamy wanted Arisa to sing and kept whining about it. Arisa got fed up after a while and snapped. Everything looked cool until Bellamy tracked down Arisa after a night out and took a swing at Arisa's shin with the golf club. Arisa was lying in his bed in the hotel room when Bellamy barged in and said this. Although the striker later apologized and was fined 2 weeks' wages, the damage to the relationship had already been done. Fans saw Bellamy in a negative light. The Welshman got benched in the Champions League final, and Arisa said he could forgive but never forget what Bellamy did to him. Bellamy was let go at the end of the season and moved on to West Ham, where he spent the next 2 seasons under the radar. Man City then splashed £14 million on a 4.5-year deal for Bellamy in January 2009. Although Bellamy got off to a good start, scoring on his debut and netting a few more goals, the team lacked consistency. Bellamy also often clashed with the Brazilian clique in the squad, talking about Robinho, Elano and Glauber. Not to mention that the Welshman also had a difficult relationship with the manager, Roberto Mancini, over training schedules. But something strange happened later that year. During a Manchester derby, a pitch invader ran onto the pitch but was quickly handled by the security. However, Bellamy decided to go over to the scene. He got spat on by the invader, and this triggered Bellamy to shove the fan in the face.
After Bellamy had scored, fan runs onto the pitch, skillfully rugby tattled by the stewards, and they lift him up, only for Bellamy to stroll over and give him, what's that? A cough, a slap. Certainly kind of
he
not
doesn't need
what
to go anywhere near the
not
fan,
what you
Adrian.
want to see. He doesn't. Mark Hughes has defended him, saying
The FA investigated Bellamy for improper conduct, but avoided punishment, instead receiving support from the club. The Welshman retired in 2014 after a stint at Cardiff and a return to Liverpool. Craig Bellamy was quite the character on and off the pitch. Rival defenders had this to say about his trash talking.
Trash talking striker. Do you know what? I played against Craig Bellamy, and even though he didn't play as a central striker, his trash talk was like one of one. Because he's really, really sarcastic. Like, you do something good and he'd be like, oh, you know, you're playing really well, or what's your name again? And you then start telling him your name. But that's the whole point. He has no idea who you are and nobody else does either. So he would just be relentless with you.
But it's safe to say he's turned a corner since entering into management.